What is going on, good people of Earth? My name is Greg Salazar, and this is Satire Studio. I created this channel for a number of reasons. The primary reason being that I can now talk about whatever the heck I want. I'm no longer bound by the rules of Satire Studio, which is where I'm sure most of you, if you've heard of me before, are attributing me. I am not bound by the rules of science anymore. I'm not limited in terms of content. I can now speak freely with respect to any relevant topic in today's world. And if you're interested at all in what I have to say about a topic, this is the channel for that. I'm going to try to stay as objective as possible in Science Studio, and here on Satire Studio, I will speak my mind. And if it offends people, I'm going to say up front that I really don't care. This is my opinion. I'm not trying to please everybody. I'm just telling you why I feel the way I do about certain topics in, again, today's world. Now, you might be wondering why I'm holding the mic. It's because I feel a little more in control. Don't judge me. And I want to kick things off by talking about a topic that is very relevant to me and my city. So I grew up in Panama City, Florida. That's where I am right now. I'm actually on the beach side. But we were just recently hit by Hurricane Michael, a very, very strong Category 4, borderline Category 5. I feel as though they just didn't want to call it a Cat 5 because then it would have been, the only 4 major hurricanes to make landfall in the U.S. ever. Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Camille, and Labor Day Hurricane were the only 3 to make landfall as Category 5s, and Hurricane Michael, which struck on, I believe, October 10, 2018, was a 155-mile-per-hour hurricane. That is literally 1 mile per hour short of being a Category 5 hurricane, so I mean, come on. Now I'm going to try to make light of this situation, but to be completely honest, people lost everything in the storm. My parents lost virtually everything. I was helping them move all this week. They're still in the process of moving what they can, but their house is gone. A lot of people lost their homes. They lost the belongings inside. Some cities have been completely leveled. Mexico Beach doesn't even exist anymore. It's a pile of sand and rubble. That's how strong this storm was. A lot of people are comparing this to Katrina, Hurricane Andrew, and I think this is more in line with Hurricane Andrew just because the flooding wasn't as severe as it was with Katrina, because Katrina, of course, hit a city that is 6 feet below sea level. So you have a flooding issue there, not only because of the storm surge, but also because of just where the city is with respect to the surrounding water. But I'm not going to try to compare storms and say which one's worse. I was only through this one, and I can tell you that this one is pretty devastating. It has ripped up trees. It has pulled off roofs from houses. It's something that I can't get you to wrap your mind around it unless you've been through something similar. And I invite you to do what you can if you have the time to either donate your time or money to the Red Cross, Salvation Army, or just independently in Panama City, Mexico Beach, and surrounding areas who are the most affected by this storm. It is still so bad here. Many places are still without power. They will be for weeks. Water is not safe to drink. It still isn't even over here, and we were barely affected on the beach side. So things aren't doing too well right now for this section of the state. But the real meat and potatoes of this video stems from an interview the FEMA chief gave to the press regarding victims of Hurricane Michael. This video is a little difficult to watch, but with context, I think we're going to be able to clear some things up. I'm also going to give you my opinion on the matter and talk about why I actually kind of agree with him. Here we go.
But if you want to live in these areas, you got to do it in a more resilient fashion. You got to mitigate your homes. You've got to understand why we ask you to evacuate.
So let's summarize the first chunk of this first. He says that people who live in essentially hurricane-prone areas should be more resilient. But how much more vague can you really be? That resilient, what are you talking about? We should reinforce our homes with concrete, or resilient as in we should get the heck out when we see a Cat 4 or 5 headed our way? I think he means the latter, but he doesn't explicitly say so. And he also understands, I assume, that there are people in the paths of these storms who cannot leave their homes due to medical reasons, or maybe they just can't afford it. Maybe they don't have a car or even a bike. I mean, anything to get out of town. So what are you exactly saying here, my dude?
And every day we've got to figure out how to make this country more financially resilient. A lot of people can't put their hands on $500. Therefore, they're not properly insured. They're not spending the money to mitigate.
Yeah, I would like to know how he plans to mitigate his home from a Category 4 or 5 hurricane. Does he plan to line the walls with a foot of concrete, use bulletproof glass? What is his policy prescription for preventing a hurricane from destroying a house, especially if you're along the coast. Now, Mexico Beach has experienced, not to this extent, not that I can recall, storms of particular calibers that require homes to be lifted off the ground. Obviously, storm surge a huge concern along the beach. Actually, there were a few houses that did survive the storm. But in general, homes built in the U.S., built out of wood, right? Built out of sheetrock, just stuff that is so insignificant compared to concrete, are not going to be able to withstand, in general, 150 plus mile per hour winds, let alone water rushing in from the Gulf of Mexico. So I feel as though he's just saying this because he's obligated to, because he has to come up with some reason why people were as devastated as they were from the storm, and, oh mind you, still currently are.
Or they're moving to areas where they've never experienced a Category 4 storm, and very few people have ever experienced a Cat 4 or Cat 5 storm. I mean, we've only had 3 Cat 5s hit since 1851. We learn, and what I'm afraid of is hurricane amnesia. 10 years is going to go by, and we're going to forget what happened in Mexico Beach. So how do we build a culture of preparedness? FEMA tries to do it every year, but a lot of people don't pay attention to anything that we do or say when it's a blue sky day and nothing's happening. People only focus the camera on us after big events like this. And that's the frustrating part of being FEMA administrator, or the people that dedicate their lives to trying to get people to understand these hazards.
So I sense the frustration. Obviously, I think that this whole interview, to an extent, was kind of pointless, because everyone knows, especially those who were in the path of the storm, those people know that if they could have evacuated, they should have. But a lot of people either chose not to because they were worried about their belongings, and rightfully so. I mean, you can't evacuate your contents. You just have to evacuate your person. And if you're concerned about your life, then yeah. And if you die from the storm, then yeah, it's your fault. You were told to evacuate. But if you can't evacuate, again, this all comes back to those little scenarios, those little caveats in this word mandatory, right? Mandatory evacuation. How do you mandatorily evacuate if you are, I don't know, bedridden, or if you don't have a car, or if you have nowhere to go and no money? What do? Do you just start walking in the direction away from the storm and hope that you still survive?
So you guys help me. How do we learn from this and move forward?
Okay, I'll tell you, FEMA chief, there's no way to mitigate damage and destruction from a Category 5 hurricane unless you just stop building around places that are prone to being struck by hurricanes of that caliber. You can't fix Mother Nature. I mean, we have technology, right, that can dissolve clouds, that can make tornadoes disappear. I'm sure our government's been working on stuff like that too. I mean, China publicizes stuff like that they do. I mean, those are probably just backyard experiments for the Chinese at this point. But when you ask the audience, when you ask the public what FEMA is supposed to do to help prevent these tragedies in the future, are you expecting me to tell you that we just shouldn't build there anymore? I feel like that's what he's trying to say. Like, he's trying to say that Mexico Beach shouldn't exist because it's in the path of a hurricane, or Panama City shouldn't exist because it's in the path of a hurricane. We should only build cities in areas that are not prone to any natural disasters of any kind. So that's it, folks. That's where the clip ends, and I'm just left wondering if this guy expects us all to move to Iowa, where no natural disasters exist. Well, what, tornadoes? Oregon, volcanoes, Canada, blizzards, New York, nor'easters. You get my point, right? There's a natural disaster for every location on planet Earth. Everywhere you live is a risk. Some are riskier than others. Obviously, people in historic Pompeii would agree with that statement. But in a general sense, if you are living in a location that is prone to a natural disaster, you knowingly make the choice to move there, okay? If you can move, you can. But if you can't move, you still know in the back of your head that you're in a natural disaster zone, or a place that's prone to natural disasters. Look, a hurricane hasn't struck Panama City in 20 years, and the closest one since then was Opal. Opal hit, just between Fort Walton and Pensacola, and Panama City was pretty wrecked by that. In fact, Highway 98 that runs that entire coastline was pulled into the ocean, basically, from Hurricane Opal. That was the last storm that kind of hit the panhandle of Florida. And now we have Michael, and now we're being blamed for being in the path of a storm that we ultimately couldn't prevent, and that we weren't given enough warning to leave from. I mean, like I said, people working on Tuesdays before this storm came, on a Wednesday night, on a Thursday. It just makes no sense to me that this guy's complaining like this. Are you seriously going to complain to the victims of this storm who no longer have houses, who no longer have cars to leave anymore? about the fact that they stayed in the path of the storm when some of them honestly could not help it. That's all I have for this video. I want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. This is just a topic that kind of irked me. I wanted to start this entire channel off with a pretty hot topic that was relevant to me, and hopefully going forward we'll find more content like this, because I think it's juicy and it's worth talking about, because I know that I'm not the only person with an opinion on planet Earth. That's all. I'll catch you guys in the next one. This is Satire Studio. Thanks for talking with us.